to me talking about my version of the Marauders in podcast form with Emma. And it has happened twice now where I have almost started the episodes and just not introed them. So that was pretty fun. But as I was telling Emma, I did remember to ask questions today. So that's pretty funky. And also I feel like nothing super eventful happened this week that warrants us just talking and not answering questions. Did anything crazy happen with you?
Last night, me and my friends, we got like fancy dresses on, and then we went thrifting and got pizza.
It's pretty exciting.
We had our RA take pictures for us outside. And then we watched Anastasia. It was great.
Oh, that's so great. My car broke down.
I love when that happens.
No, it was so funny because I've gotten a battery pretty recently in that car. And so when my car didn't start, I was like, it doesn't really seem like it would be the battery. And it sounded really weird. So I was like, this is probably like the starter or the alternator or whatever. And so I take it in and they're like, it was the battery. And I'm like, are you sure? Because that battery is only like a year and a half old. And they were like, we ran the test, like we plugged it into the thing. And on a scale of 1 to 600, it scored a 12. And I was like, okay, so it was the battery. Good to know. But they did check the other stuff just because I asked them to, and it was fine. So nothing too crazy. But
Fun.
It does make me wonder what the heck my car did to this battery. It was just like, no.
Batteries usually last a little more than that, I would say.
Yeah, I would say. All right. So somebody asked what our go-to dinner is as a college student. And I have my answer. What's yours?
Maybe just not. There is, okay, so there's
you
like
have to eat food.
There's like our dining center. And
Yeah.
then like next to it, there's like a smaller like ice cream shop that also has hamburgers. So just
Okay.
the hamburgers usually.
Okay, that's
Or
pretty
just
great.
the ice cream sometimes.
I felt that. For me, it is, so one of the dining hall that I'm closest to, it just like, it's kind of like a high school lunch line where it's like whatever they have is like, that's what it
That's
is
what
today.
you get.
And it's usually pretty good, but sometimes I'm just like, I need to know what I'm gonna eat. And so in that case, I go to the other dining hall, and I have them make me a burrito. And that burrito has not much on it except for beans and rice and cheese. And then, and then I have it with sour cream and pico de gallo, and that is good.
Sounds good.
That's what I have when I don't want to just not know what I'm gonna eat. All my like dining hall food has been like good. Like there hasn't been anything that I'm like, oof, you know?
Some of it here is a little sketchy, but
That's rough. Okay, I got so upset. They always make one thing about both dining halls. The desserts are fantastic. Like so good. And so they always have like these lemon bars. Or like not always, but they do most of the time. And they're so good. And so then one time they had them, and I was like, they look a little bit different than the normal lemon bars, but it's all right. They always make great lemon bars, and they were awful, and it made me so sad. I don't know what they did. Whoever made them like messed it up, and it was just so unbelievably sad. But yeah. Anyway, that's the vibes. Let's find another question. Okay, well, Kristen, again, Emma's roommate, who is in the room.
I already discussed this with her earlier.
She said which Marauder is most excited for Midnights, and it's very clearly James.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah,
too.
I don't think there's even like a question who the Swiftie of the group is.
Yeah.
It's James.
The rest of them think they're too cool.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, you're right. The others are like, you know. I feel like Sirius would be like a secret Swiftie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he would like kind of, yeah, anyway. Have I watched Heartstopper? No, but I do have a story about it. The story is that my we'll say my campus crush was like, you should watch Heartstopper. And I was like, why am I going to be more likely to watch Heartstopper? Because she said it versus anybody else. Like my entire fandom being like, please watch Heartstopper.
Literally me being like, please watch Heartstopper.
I know. Wow. And I'm like, I want to. And then like, I was like, I think I actually might do it now. It was pretty bad. But I still haven't, so... But I do regret to say that if I do in the next couple of weeks, it's probably not because of what y'all did. And I'm so sorry about that.
I think even if you do watch Heartstopper, I think people should keep asking every single time.
Okay. I think that's fair at this point. Oh, somebody asked what Snuffle's Hogwarts house is. I think she's a pretty solid Hufflepuff. Because she is literally an emotional support dog. So it would be a little disconcerting if she was anything else. She is not a Gryffindor. She is literally not brave at all. I've just gotten her brave enough to trust me when I tell her to jump up on something that she will actually do it. But no, she still won't jump into the back of the car though, because I think she's scared it's going to kill her. And I'm like, you've been in the back of the car a million times. So no, she is not a Ravenclaw. Snuffles is the dumbest dog in the world.
Oh, poor Snuffles.
Oh, I posted this on TikTok, but you're not really on TikTok anymore. The story about her. So Snuffles is an emotional support dog, but technically in the eyes of the law, she's a service dog. Because
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, because I'm disabled and she performs tasks for me that help my disability, because she can help with dysautonomia. So that means I am allowed to take her places, but she's not public access trained because like I didn't get her with that intention, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm allowed to take her in places, but the rule with all service dogs is if they look untrained, they can just kick you out. Like it doesn't matter if they're legit or not. Like if they're being a butt, no. But there was one night I realized I need to get something at the library. She was with me. I was like, it's going to be 2 minutes. She's going to be fine. She knows how to concentrate that long and, you know, stay in a heel, do all of her stuff. She'll be fine. And so we went in and I got my stuff printed and it was fine. And then as we're walking out, I'm like, I'm so proud of you, Snuffles. Like you went into a public area and like didn't do anything. And I was like, man, maybe I should work more with her on it. And then I opened the door to leave. And instead of going out the door, she ran into the glass wall beside the door. Like head first, and it went bong, and I was like, oh gosh. Yeah. And the employees at the front desk laughed at her, and I laughed too, because it was really dumb. So yes, she is so good. She tries so hard, but she is just so no spatial awareness on this dog. She's so dumb. Oh, and I did have a couple of people ask how Snuffles is doing in the dorm. She loves it. She's having the time of her life. Right now she's looking out the window and she's very happy. The last one that I've seen like repeated a lot is like, what are we majoring in? I feel like we've talked about this before, but I'm a choral education major. So I'm gonna teach kids how to sing one day. And then you don't really know, right? Like you're undeclared officially, right?
I'm not gonna say anything till I like decide more, but I have like an idea-ish.
Okay. I think that's chill enough for today. I feel like we can get started. So do we need a refresher on what happened last time?
I think I mostly remember, but
basically important thing is Sirius
is so rich.
Sirius is quite literally the richest wizard to ever walk this earth. Besides Alphard, of course. Yeah, no. Man's is literally simply too rich. It's a little uncomfortable. Okay, so we should somebody gave me a suggestion on how we should enter this episode. And now I don't remember. I don't know. We should do the Monster Mash into this episode, though, because we're getting pretty close to Halloween.
Yeah.
Anyway, so A lot of people messaged me after the last episode and were like, and did the conversion. Like, not only did the exchange rate on galleons, but also did it from 1970 to
Like
now.
inflation.
Yeah. And it was like 73 like billion dollars or something. Or like
Billion?
nine. Yes, I think it was like $93 billion. It's like, or
Wow.
something like that. Like
I guess he's
simply
just that rich.
just an absurd amount. And they were like, you didn't actually mean this, right? And I was like, I guess I did. Like, I'm sorry. If that's how much money that says that Sirius made, like, that's just how much money it was, you know? um, so when we're saying Sirius is loaded, we're talking an absurd amount of money. And I think that that's funny, but some people...
Hey, let me just look something up real quick. Like,
Oh, how rich the richest man alive is? Because it's nowhere
like
near
how
that.
much is like the US military budget?
Oh, not even close to that. Actually, no. The military budget is probably...
This is like $700 billion.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know, he's getting there. But yeah. No. Anyway, kind of funny. So anyway, so definitely I think McGonagall helps him out with all of this.
Yeah,
Because
as she should.
She sits him
They
down
don't
on the
have like
first day.
finance classes there.
No, they don't.
Even if you
They
did,
don't-
like what
they
do
don't
you
even-
do?
They don't even learn math. He doesn't even know
They
what
don't.
this number is. Anyway, so Minerva's like, okay, so you're gonna need some help here. And she like sits him down and is like, listen, I know this is cool. I think this is cool too, but like, dude. And so they all kind of
Word
chill
for
out
word
about
what
it.
she says.
Yes.
But like, dude.
But like, dude. Yeah, and so she sits down and she sits them all down and they're all like, okay, you're right, we should chill out about this and like not make it a big deal or whatever. Or like not as big of a deal as they can make it. Like, I'm sure it's gonna get around the school that he's literally the richest wizard ever. But like but yeah. But then she sits down with Sirius alone and she's like, okay, like, what do you want to do with this money? And he's like, I really want to waste it all as fast as possible. And she's like, serious? So here's what we're not gonna do. We're not gonna do that. And he's like, why not? It would be really funny. And it doesn't mean anything to me. And she's like, okay, but no. And he's like, when it comes down to it, I don't want to have it anymore. Like, I'm gonna keep enough so that like I can live and probably live very comfortably. But like I'm not gonna keep any of this. And she's like your options aren't keeping it and wasting it. Like, those aren't the two options, you know? There's some middle ground here. And so she's like, you could like, I don't know, do some good. And she's like, but most importantly, you should not make this decision like now. Like, please don't. She's like, you should wait a while. And then she like helps him get in touch with like, I don't know, somebody at Gringotts that's like that like he can contact when he like needs to transfer any of the money. But it only takes him one day to figure out where his first transfers are gonna go. So yeah, so to set the scene, it is like the one rare occasion where like all five friends are like actually together in the common room, like in the Gryffindor common room. And like, you know, they're vibing. Remus is on a couch reading, Lily and Peter are playing chess. James is like doing something really
Peter
dorky.
has friends.
James is doing something dorky, like polishing a broomstick. I don't know, that was the only thing I could come up with.
He's just going on a run, but just in the common room. So it's just like...
He would, though. But anyway. But, you know, it's pretty quiet, and almost nobody's realizing that Sirius is just writing a letter. And then when he asked to borrow James's owl, James is like, yeah, but I feel like the time has come where you can buy your own owl. He's like considering you're the richest wizard alive, and he's like, cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, I should probably get on that.
He's just like,
But yeah,
nah. Why would I when I can just borrow yours?
yeah. But then, when he gets back, Remus is like, okay, who is that to? And he's like, that person at Gringotts. And Remus is just like, and he's like, don't tell me you're transferring things already. And he's like, sure, but I thought like we weren't big on like the whole lying to each other thing. And Remus is like, dude. And he's like, how much of it? And he's like, how much what? And he's like, money did you transfer out of your bloody account, dude? How much money is this? Um, and then, James is like, what's going on here? And yeah, they tell him. And anyway, Sirius is like, come on, guys, it was only 4. And they're like, 4 what? He's like, million. And they're like, dude, like, we know you have 700 of them, but 1 million is not
A million is
something
still
crazy.
a lot.
And Sirius is like, you guys are all acting like I'm irresponsible. It went to you. And then they're like, what? And he's like, you each get 1 million. And Lily's like, Sirius, you did not have to do that. He's like, I know, but I wanted to. And they're like, and Remus is like, okay, I'm appreciative of that, but Sirius, you can't just waste your money because you have friends. And he's like, waste? He's like, is it a waste to know that you all are going to be comfortable for the rest of your lives? A waste to know that we can all like choose to fight in the war after Hogwarts instead of like trying to get a job? And he's like, is it a waste to make sure that you can keep your family safe, Remus? And Remus is like, and they're all like, ooh, Anyway, oh yeah, and then Sirius is like, I'm not doing this fast just because like I haven't thought about it. I'm doing it because it was the first thing I thought about. He's like, all of you need it, and I have it more than enough, way too much. And then James is like, that is great. I don't need it though. But then Sirius is like, you really think your parents are just gonna let you join the war without getting a job? He's like, you really think they're not gonna cut you off in hopes that you'll get a job and not immediately go fighting? And that's like very true. I feel like Effie and Monty would like very much be like, yes, stand up for yourself, like do what you think is right. But like,
but also like, we don't want you to die at 18.
Yeah. So they would not let him just kind of do that. They would definitely be like, no, you have to get a job and you're not getting any money from us, if that would help him not go fight immediately. And so that James is like, oh shoot, maybe I do need that money. Maybe not 1 million galleons, but something. So they're all just kind of like sitting there and they're like grateful, but like also kind of mad and also like, what the heck?
I imagine they're all like, what do I do with this much money?
I know.
So then they're like, what is Sirius doing with that much money?
I know, but I think Lily was like, thanks, Sirius. I think she was the only one who actually thanked him like there, Anyway,
Lily needs it too. She's kind of had a rough time.
Lily has had a rough. I feel like of all the people who deserve 1 million galleons, it is for sure Lily right now. But anyway, over the next few days, Sirius and Remus are talking a lot about the money. They talk about like how much Sirius would keep and how much he was gonna like give away. And I think Sirius ended up deciding on 500 million galleons being donated. Because like although like 200 million was still like a lot, it's not like insane at that point. That's like a couple billion, which is still too much, but it's not.
He's like on par with like the rest of his family.
Yeah, and also on par with like the Potters or something like that. So anyway, but so then
still like rich, but not like
and he's just gonna keep that much until he graduates and then decide what to do with that. But then they're talking about all the charities they want to give the money to, and he's like, all Muggle. First thing that he says, he's like, they're all going to Muggle charities immediately. And there's so many possibilities. So it's pretty difficult. I think they ended up finding a list of Muggle charities in like the Room of Requirement or something and being like, this is helpful. And so they're like going through and like deciding and everything. And I think Remus helps with like all of that. But yeah. And then one night, Sirius decided to bring up the big question. So he and Remus are like sitting on his bed, and they've like been looking through the list again and talking about their days, and it's nice and everything. And then Sirius is like, Remus, and he's like, mm-hmm. He's like, I was thinking about after Hogwarts, and Remus is like, yeah, I'd say we've been doing that quite a lot. And he's like, yeah, right. So I was thinking about us after Hogwarts, and Remus is like, uh-huh, and he's like, so do we want to live together?
He's like, I can afford like a whole like block.
um yeah, and Remus just kind of smiles and he's like, yeah, I mean, like, I'd want to. And he's like, just the two of us? And he's like, yeah. That's kind of what I thought you meant. And he's like, all right, good, me too, cool. And then Remus is like, all right, any particular reason you felt like you should ask that right now? And he's like, no, it's just like, I don't know, we're 17. We're barely of age. And he's like, yeah, that's very true. And he's like, and sometimes people don't want to live with the people that they like dated in school. And Remus just kind of stops for a second, and he's like, I feel like it hadn't occurred to Remus that they were like in like a school relationship, you know, and that historically like those don't work out. Because he's like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like that, but then he's like, but that's what everybody in school relationships thinks. And so now Remus is kind of panicking, and he's like, do you want to live in separate places after school? And Sirius is like, no, like not at all. Things might get more difficult, and I want to make sure that like we're on the same page. And Remus is like, I'm always the one to bring up stuff like this. How come Sirius is bringing this up? And now this is making Remus more stressed, and he's like, okay, what do you mean by things getting more difficult? And Sirius is like, I don't know. People always say that, right? Like, they love being in a relationship, but then they live together and they realize that they actually hate like how the other person lives. And Remus is like, Sirius,
live together.
Literally, he says, Sirius, we've been living together for 6 years. And he's like, yeah, but not like that. He's like, we sleep in the same bed. And he's like, not all of the time. And he's like, yeah, but that's because you kick me to the floor in the middle of the night most of the time. And he's like, right. What if that happens when we're living together and there's nowhere else for you to go? And Remus is like, listen, I'm hoping we have the sense to buy a bigger mattress than like a twin mattress that these are. And Sirius like rolls his eyes, and he's like, fine, you're right. Everything's
like, no, they
perfect.
cost too much.
He's like, fine, you're right. Everything's gonna be perfect, and we're not gonna have any issues. And Remus is like, hold on, I can't get over this. If for some reason we still didn't get a bigger thing, would we not have a couch? Would we not have anything?
No, just the bed, no other furniture.
And Sirius is like not having it, and Remus is like, okay, I'm sorry. I know like what you meant, and like I think we're gonna be fine. And Sirius is like, really? And he's like, yeah. And Remus is like, it surprises me that like you're the one who's like nervous about this. And Sirius is like, I'm not nervous. I'm just, I guess we really haven't talked about that stuff before, like after Hogwarts stuff. And I had this whole plan, and then I realized we had never talked about it, and I didn't know if you were thinking the same thing. Which I think is true. I don't think they really don't talk about like after Hogwarts stuff. I feel like some couples are like, oh, like when we do this, like they're not like that. They don't do that. I don't think they talk about their future in general. I think they're like, we're here and that's it. I don't even think they really talk about right now things. I think Remus still isn't sure, like, if he was to hypothetically introduce Sirius to someone and, like, they were completely honest from the get-go, I don't think he's even, like, is this my boyfriend? Like, I don't think he knows. Like, they're just kind of together, and that's it. They don't really discuss labels or anything. And I still don't think, I brought this up, like, during season 1, I still don't think that they've said I love you to each other, which is, like, a little weird. But I think Sirius still kind of hates when people say that because of all of the trauma with his family and everything like that. I don't think he's really ever gonna get over that. So, like, even Effie doesn't say that. And so Remus had never pushed it. They had like a total of one conversation where Sirius was like, yeah, no, I don't think we should say that, but like we can show it. And he was like, cool. And that's been it. But like it doesn't really seem normal to like move in with someone without telling them that you love them first. And so he's like, I don't know what to do. Like Remus is like for example, right now would be like a good time to just like let him know. But like, but like we're not gonna do that. But yeah, so he's like, so instead he's like, okay, Sirius, I don't see us going anywhere, you know? Like I care about you more than anybody else, and I don't see that changing. So to me, it makes sense that we should move in. So like he didn't say like I love you, but like Sirius got it. And he's like, yeah, me too. And so they kissed, and then, you know, Remus is like, so I am expecting a 5-story mansion. And Sirius is like, yeah, good luck with that. I would rather die than end up in a mansion again. And Remus is like, well, shoot, I guess we have to break up. You know, it's a whole thing.
He's like, I'm moving in with James then.
I am the Potters. Anyway, so let's go see Lily and James. So I think ever since Sirius got the money, it has gotten way easier for them to slip under the radar. Like, way easier. They could do anything, and I don't think anybody would notice.
Yeah.
And so I think they had, like, their first little date, and I think it was great. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go into detail here because it's not very plot-heavy, and we have some other things to get to today. But, you know, that means it's your version. It can be whatever you want.
My version.
Yeah. Yeah, so things get easier to hide. They felt more and more like they don't really have to tell their friends because they're preoccupied. They're like, this is fine. And they're also like, maybe it's kind of fun to sneak around. This is kind of cool. And so, you know, and it's also kind of nice for them to figure out like what's happening between them, like on their own. And like if their friends knew, they'd always be like, so like what's happening between you guys? And they're like, what if we don't want that? So, you know, they've been having a good time. This bullet point says really it's a lot of kissing, like TBH, an uncomfortable amount, like bordering on that one-head couple there for a bit in the beginning. It's a miracle they didn't get caught, like, for real. So I feel like that holds true. But I also think there's just like a lot of joking, you know, there's still a lot of head boy and girl stuff to be done, and it's just like a lot of good vibes. Like I feel like one time Sirius came into the prefect common room like when James like didn't come back like late at night, and instead of them doing something like kissing or cuddling, they're like playing a very intense game of like 1v1 soccer with like a quaffle as a soccer ball, and just like aggressively and like just various magic things like for the goals and stuff. And Sirius was like, hey, I'm sorry, I thought I would be like interrupting you guys doing like work or something. And James is like, shut up, Sirius, I'm here to win.
He's like, this is work.
He's like, this is very important. But yeah, I also think there's some sad times here. Like Lily's parents are dead. That doesn't go away. That's not fun. And I think James was just there for Lily a lot, and like he knew now not to like talk about like, man, this is so sad, but just to like listen. And yeah, but we're not gonna dwell on that because that's just not fun. So one night James is like, hey, so like I was wondering something, and she's like, yeah, and he's like, so there's a Hogsmeade weekend next weekend, you know, I the second weekend in December, which happens to be this month, you know, next week. And she's like, thanks, James. Yeah. She's like, yeah, and he's like, I don't know, maybe we could go together. You know, I've recently come into a large amount of gold. I think it might be kind of cool.
Gosh. No way.
And Lily's like, yeah, right. She's like, yeah, we should go. And he's like, and I don't think we should like hide it that we're like together. And she was like, oh, you don't think? And he's like, yeah, like, I don't think we should, like, scream it from the rooftops or anything, but, like, I think we might be able to hold hands. And Lily's like, that might be nice. And yeah, so she's like, yeah, that sounds all right. And he's like, and James was like, this is awesome. And she's like, okay, but there's one thing. If we gotta tell Remus, Sirius, and Peter before next weekend then. And he's like, right. And she's like, we do we want to do that? um, and James is like, well, I'm thinking they should probably be told at some point. And she's like, or we could just not tell them and let them find out with the rest of the school. And Lily's like, please let us do this. And he's like, they would hate us forever. And she's like, but it would be so funny. It would be literally so funny. He's like, they would hate us forever. And she's like, you're right. So I think
he's like, we already got the money. We're good to
go. But I think they end up deciding that, like, if like a moment happens where like it's a really good moment for them to tell the others, then they're gonna tell the others. But if that doesn't happen within the next week, then they're just not going to. And she's like, yeah, you know, they'll just have to find out when we order a drink with 2 straws of the 3 broomsticks, you know, and that's just gonna be how it is. Okay, so I think by like the Wednesday before this Hogsmeade weekend, Sirius, like with the help of Remus, has like finally figured out like where all the money's gonna go. I feel like it's been a couple weeks. So you know, he like sends it off to Gringotts, like where it's all gonna go. And then like, you know, within like a day or so, he's gotten certificates from of his anonymous donations to all of these Muggle charities. And he's like gotten them all back, so he compiles them into one envelope and then sends it to number 12 Grimmauld Place. Just so that they know. And I think it's just one of his prouder moments. But yeah, so then, you know, he talks to Minerva about this whole thing, and you know, they have another long talk where they talk about everything, even Regulus. And Sirius doesn't tell her that he's like a Death Eater. Feels like that might be a little bit of an invasion of privacy there. But he tells her that like he's close with Voldemort, like that, you know, that's kind of happening. But she says what everybody else has said at least once. He's like, you know, he's only 15, you know, he growing up in that household had to have affected him too. But, you know, she also tells him, like, she tells Sirius that, like, it's not his fault. And I'm not sure if anybody's, like, really explicitly said that to him before, so it had a really big effect on him. And, you know, he just starts thinking about it, and afterwards he's kind of wandering around the castle, just thinking about that, thinking about all this stuff. And then, you know, he finds himself at, like, the door of that abandoned classroom where, like, they always used to meet up, you know? And, like, he's like, dang, he's like, before it used to be, like, no matter what, like, we still talk to each other. And, like, now, like, no. So, I don't know. And it just kind of makes him think, like, okay, like, maybe I should have tried to be more understanding, but also he's a Death Eater, you know? It's like, having some issues there. But anyway, he opens the door just to kind of look inside. Maybe he would go inside and think. But then Regulus is already there. He's sitting on the opposite, on the floor, like opposite the door, where like they always used to sit and talk, and they just lock eyes. And Sirius is like, "Is he actually here?" I'm like I'm like imagining it, cause like this whole thing. But then Regulus is like, "Well, say it then." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Whatever you came here to tell me, spit it out." And Sirius is like, He's like, "Did we plan to talk to each other and I didn't remember it? Like, what is happening here?" And Regulus is like, "Spit it out." And he's like, "What the heck?" He's like, "You and I both know you have that map, so why else would you be here?" And he's like, "Oh." He's like, I don't have the map with me." And Regulus is like, "Then why are you here?" And he's like, "I guess same reason you are. Needed some quiet." And then he kind of walks in, and like without even realizing it, he walks in and closes the door. And Regulus is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, am I not allowed in here?" And Regulus is like, "Okay, well, you haven't looked at me in months and made it very clear that you didn't want to speak to me, so and Sirius is like, "You spoke to me the other week." And he's like, "Yeah, that was different, okay?" And Regulus is like, "What do you want?" And then Sirius has to think, because he's like, "What do I want?" I just kind of am here. What is happening? So he's just like, "Show it to me, the mark." And it just kind of spills out, and he's like, "I don't know where that came from." But he just kind of like feels like he really has to see it in order to really believe it. And so Regulus like doesn't take his eye off of Sirius, and he unbuttons the cuff on his left arm and pulls up his sleeve. And like Sirius knows it's coming. He's like seen it before. He's seen it on like cousins and uncles and in posters and lots of places, but he was just like, dude, it was just weird. And I think only Voldemort, I don't know if this is said in actual canon, but only Voldemort is the one who can like give the mark. So it's like Voldemort had to have touched his brother, and then he was like, no, he can't look anymore. And Regulus pulls the sleeve down again. And there's just a second where he's like, do I yell at Regulus? Do I punch him? Do I hug him? Do I commit arson again? Like, what's
again?
There's a lot of conflicting emotions here. But then Regulus says, I didn't do it just to spite you, And it's like, whoa, okay. And it's just like exactly what Sirius needed to hear for some reason. So he's like, yeah, I know. But then he just kind of noticed like how different Regulus looks right now. Like he doesn't have the air of like, I'm better than everybody else. And when Sirius looks closer, he realizes there's like some redness in his face. His eyelashes don't seem to be completely dry. And he's like, are you okay? And Regulus is like, what the frick, dude? He's like, where does this come from? You come into my crying classroom and start asking me questions. But he's like, I'm fine. And just kind of puffs himself up and does all that. And so then Sirius finds himself just like walking to sit next to Regulus, like kind of confused on what is happening here too. And neither of them say anything for a while, but finally Regulus breaks the silence and he's like, so how's the money? And he's like gone mostly. And he's like, okay, so you didn't just send those certificates to Mum just for a laugh. And he's like, nope. And Regulus is like, okay. He's like, I actually think that was the right move for what it's worth. It's stupid for one person to have that much money anyway. And Sirius doesn't say anything. And just like abruptly changed the subject. He's like, when I left, you never told Mom about me and Remus. You still haven't. And it's like clearly like a question. Like, why didn't you do that? And Regulus is like, yeah, well, it's not like telling Mom you were dating a gay werewolf would have made my life any easier. and Sirius just stares, and Regulus is like, what am I not supposed to like say? Like, you're gay or something? And he's like, how long have you known Remus is a werewolf? He's like, who told you that? And Sirius actually looks genuinely panicked. And Regulus is like, oh, he's like, how long have you known? And he's like, I guess like second year. and he's like, no, nobody told me. I just kind of. And he's like, your second year? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, and you didn't think to mention it to me? And he's like, I didn't want you to think it was obvious. And he's like, is it? And he's like, not really. And so Sirius is in full panic mode. And Regulus is like completely over it. He's like, this is old news. He's like, listen, I was like 12. You were being rebellious and you had all these friends, and I wanted to know why you liked them so much, especially when Lupin kept on getting sick so often. And he's like, okay, so you just figured it out. And he's like, no, I guessed. And then Severus started catching on in like third year, and then suddenly he wasn't allowed to talk about it anymore. It wasn't that hard to piece things together. Also, you call him Moony. He's like,
it wasn't that hard.
He's like, I feel like that wasn't exactly secretive. And Sirius is like, dude, he's just stunned. But again, Regulus does not care. He's actually like thinking this is kind of funny. Like, and then he goes, oh, I also figured out that you guys are all animagi. And Sirius is like, what? He's like, how did you know that? He's like, I didn't, but I do now. And he just grins, and Sirius is like, what the heck? And he's like, listen, I figured things out, like, you know.
He's like, how do you accidentally bring back a deer?
Like, I think it was low-key that I think actually I think he figures it out from like their Patronuses and then the nicknames, and I feel like he's always kind of thought it, maybe. And so anyway, but again, he didn't have it confirmed until literally right now. But yeah, so he's like, okay, and Sirius is just like completely shocked, and Regulus is like, okay, listen, it's not like I tried to figure it out. It's more like I was curious and then I noticed things. Like, you have no idea how much I know about the castle. This happens a lot. Um, Sirius is still shocked, but the only thing on his mind is he's like, okay, but you still never told her. You never told mom. Like, what the heck? And Regulus is like, no. He's like, why would I? And Sirius is like, you're telling me she never asked you for like dirt on me for like reasons she could say, oh, Sirius is a terrible son. And he's like, no, she did, but like there was never any point actually telling her. It's not like she would bribe me or treat me any better. And all it did was make her angrier. So like, why would I tell? And like that one fact, I feel like changes Sirius' entire perspective on Regulus. Like he just wants to keep the peace as much as he can. And so, it occurs to this and like the conversation that he had with McGonagall. It's like, okay, did he just become a Death Eater just to keep the peace? Like is that what happened? Um so Sirius is like, so you didn't tell mom I was dating Remus just because you didn't want her to be upset. And he's like, well, that, and it's not like I had any reason to try and make your life worse. Sorry. Um and and Sirius is like, so you don't actually care that like I'm gay? And Regulus rolls his eyes. He's like, no. He's like, I know you think I'm some sort of huge hypocrite, but I'm really not. And then his voice kind of trails off, and then there's fear in his eyes. And he's like, what did I just say? And he kind of tries to compose himself. And Sirius is like, a hypocrite? And he's like, no, I didn't mean that. And then he just starts to blush. And Sirius has been in shock for this entire conversation, but this is something else. He's like, what did you mean? And he's like, I just mean, like, I wouldn't tell something like that. And he's like, why? Because you're gay? And Regulus is like, whoa, nobody. And he, like, jumps to his feet, and he's like, no. He's like, why would I mean, that wouldn't make sense for me. And he's, like, bright red at this point, and Sirius is like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you like this he's like, except for that time you came to me and told me about your crush last year. And Regulus, like, it's all over at this point. He's, like, pacing. And Sirius is still just kind of sitting there and is like, what the heck? And he's like, no, stop. And Sirius keeps on going. He's thinking out loud here. He's like, what was it? He's like, what did you tell me? He's like, it seemed like you like someone, like, really like someone for the first time, right? And he's like, stop it, Sirius. And he's like, and that's when you asked me if I would let you live with me. And Regulus pulls out his wand and just points it straight at Sirius. And he's like, Snuffles! This is not a time!
Just the
Snuffles! This is not good. But he's like, I said stop it. And he's like, he's pretty angry here. And Sirius is like, shoot, I've gone too far. Regulus, no matter how argumentative they've gotten, they've never pointed wands at each other. Like, this is not... No. And, it really brings Sirius to his senses. And he's like, it's okay. He's like, I'm not gonna tell anybody. Like, I'm sorry. And Regulus is like, you can't tell. And he's like, I won't. He's like, not even Remus. And he's like, fine. Like, cool. And so, he... lowers his wand and then sits back on the ground, this time, like, his back against a pillar across the room. So they're, like, facing each other now. And Sirius, like, feels really bad. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I shouldn't, like, press this. You're right, I should have just shut up. And Regulus doesn't say anything. Or this isn't Regulus speaking, this is Sirius. He's like, it's alright, like, really, like, you didn't tell, so, like, I'm not gonna tell. Like, it's alright. And Regulus is like, no, it's not alright. He's like, because it's not just me. He's like, there was somebody else. And you'll figure out who. He's like, I think the chances of that happening are, like, extremely low here, dude.
Sirius doesn't even notice that James and Lily are dating. Like...
Literally. He's like, listen, I don't think you have anything to worry about. But Regulus is very worked up at this point. And he's like, but you will. He's like, and then it's not just me here. And Sirius is like, Regulus. He's like, you're forgetting that I'm probably the only person who understands what you're feeling right now. He's like, I'm not gonna out you or whoever this other person is. I thought it was just a crush anyway, and now he's like, you're the one who tells me that there's this other person now, like, here. Like, Regulus is not really being... He's a little worked up, you know. He's like, I'm not telling anyone. And so Regulus calms down a little bit. And Sirius is like, who would I even tell anyway? He's like, trying to be comforting. He's like, I mean, it's not like mom or dad would even believe me at this point. What am I gonna do? Write them and be like, hey, your son is gay, and they're gonna be like, haha, right. Like, no, not very believable. But this does not comfort Regulus. He's like, oh, sure, like, you wouldn't be able to figure out who it is and then share it with all your little Order of the Phoenix people as my weakness as soon as you needed Death Eater information. And Sirius is like, what the frick? He's like, I would never think of that. And Regulus is like, sure, right. And he's like, I wouldn't. He's like, you've thought about doing this to me, haven't you? And Regulus doesn't look at Sirius, and he's like, you little word I'm not gonna say on the podcast. And he's like, oh, come on, it's not like I would actually do it. He's like, what is it supposed to mean? You're just thinking of planning my demise, but never actually plan on following through? He's like, that's not exactly comforting, Regulus. But Regulus doesn't speak again, and Sirius is just, like, exasperated. He's like, what the heck is going on? But then Regulus speaks. He's like, you know what? It's fine. You can go. I don't even care anymore. He's like, well, I'm not about to leave now that I know that you have a plan to share my weakness with the Death Eaters when things get tough. He's like, dude! And Sirius takes a breath. He's like, listen, we need an agreement, regardless. We can't just... He's like, regardless of all of this, I don't want to fight you if it comes down to it. I don't want us to share information about each other, not like when I joined the Order. He's like, and I want to expect the same from you. And Regulus thinks about that for a second. He's like, what, just like pretend we don't actually know anything about each other like we do at school? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so Regulus nods and he's like, yeah, I could do that. And you swear that you're not going to say anything about me? And he's like, yeah. And so they just sit there for a second. They're like, a verbal agreement is not enough. So Regulus is like, maybe an undeniable here? And then Sirius thinks. So an undeniable vow is, okay, so here's my headcanon on the situation. I don't think that it's the unbreakable vow and nothing else. I think there's all or nothing. I think there's got to be some sort of magical agreement in between there. And I think it's an undeniable vow. Which is like without the dying. So I think this really doesn't work well with like acts. Like the unbreakable vow is like, you know, you have to vow to do something. I think this works better if you're trying to like keep something between you and somebody else, like not say anything or do something regularly or something like that. Anyway, the vow puts a visible mark on your skin until one of the two people denies the vow or like breaks a secret or, you know, breaks the vow. So like if one person does it, then both people know is the point. And so, you know, it's not gonna kill anybody, but like they'd at least know that like, okay, the other isn't saying anything, so I'm not gonna say anything. And it would also have the same effect as like the Fidelius charm, where it's like, you know, you can't give up this secret unless you choose to, you know? It's not like it could ever be like tortured out of you or anything. Like it's safe until you decide to break it. Anyway, so that's my little undeniable vow headcanon. Anyway, Sirius is like, yeah, let's do it. And so that's the end of that scene. Which is a ride. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, anyway. I feel like this is gonna be the point where I lose my mom in the podcast. She's gonna be like, no. But anyway. She's gonna be like, this is too far from canon. Here, just things are just happening now.
You're making up spells, you're making up vows, like...
I know. But anyway. So So later that night, when Remus finds Sirius, it doesn't take him long to notice that there is a black line around his left wrist. And so that's the mark of the undeniable. And it looks like a tattoo, and he's like, so Sirius has thought about getting many tattoos, but like, since when has he actually gone through with it? He's like, also, I don't think this was
He's like, why would he get a tattoo of just like
just a line? And so he's like, what you got there? He's like, did he just draw a line around his wrist with a black Sharpie? And was like, cool. And Sirius just kind of looks at it, and he looks up at Remus, and he's like, yeah, it's an undeniable vow. And Remus is like, okay, who would you make an undeniable vow with? And Sirius is like, see, if I told you, that would actually break the vow. And Remus is like, oh, okay. He really doesn't know how to feel about this, and it like shows in his face. And Sirius is like, okay, it's gonna be fine. I wouldn't make anything about anything stupid, you know, like it's just, it'll make things easier, trust me. And Remus is like, cool, I guess. I don't, sure. Anyway, that's just a short little thing because we had to acknowledge that Remus would find out about this and be like, what is it? Anyway, so let's go do something a little bit happier. So at this point, Lily and James are starting to think that they might actually just not end up telling anybody else until that date because nobody has been talking about anything.
Literally, like, probably only Regulus knows, like, honestly.
Literally. Regulus figured it out, like, months ago. Like, no, like, as soon as they kissed, he was, like, there.
He was like, I feel like a change in the air.
No, but anyway, because everyone's been weird lately. Like, Remus and Sirius have been working together a lot on this thing, but then like low-key since Wednesday, like things have been kind of weird with Sirius anyway. Like, I wonder what that could have been. Maybe he made an undeniable vow with his brother and it was really weird. Anyway,
happens all the time.
And then who the frick knows where Peter's been? So things have just been weird. So, you know, that Friday night, the common room has just been like total commotion. And Lily doesn't feel like going all the way back to, like, her prefect dorm or whatever. Also, she hasn't moved back into her other dorm. I think it's just, like, she's like, my stuff is here. I don't think she really has bad blood with any of the other girls. She's just like, I kind of like having my own room, and if I can, like, keep my own room, I'm gonna keep my own room, you know? But I don't think she has bad blood with any of the other girls right now. But anyway, point is, she didn't feel like going all the way back, so she's just chilling in the boys' dorm, studying with Remus, while the others are like getting ready for bed, and you know, everything's just great. And then finally, it happens. Remus is like, "Hey, there's a Hogsmeade weekend tomorrow. Is anyone doing anything?" And Sirius is like, "Oh, I was just thinking I'd like just stay here. You know, I've been busy. Might be nice to have the castle to myself." Also, he kind of secretly wanted to see if he could meet up with Regulus again because what the heck even was their last conversation. So I feel like they left that conversation was like, okay, cool. I think we covered everything.
All right, see ya.
And then they leave and they're like, what was that? And so yeah, Peter basically says the same thing. He's like, I don't know. I feel like Hogsmeade weekends are always just filled with like third years just going off the rails. So he's like, I don't know, it might be nice to kind of stay here. And then Lily and James, while they're both talking, are just staring at each other and they're like, are we gonna tell them about it? Like, what's gonna they just like keep on looking back and forth at each other and like making eyes. And then Remus is like, okay, what about you two? Do you guys like have to like oversee something? And he's like, oh shoot, we're the Gryffindor prefects supposed to like be the ones like in charge this weekend, making sure nobody like does anything insane in Hogsmeade. I feel like prefects have to do that sometimes. And she's like, and Lily's like, oh no, that's the Slytherins this time. And Sirius is like, well shoot, now I can't see Regulus. Anyway, but Lily's like, so actually about that. And she's looking at James. And he just kind of nods, and she's like, so me and James were actually planning on going to Hogsmeade together. And Remus is like, oh, like that's cool. Um, and
She's like, okay.
and Lily's just like still looking at James, and James gives her this look like you started it. You gotta tell the whole thing. Like
He's
I'm
like,
not
this is
helping
on
you.
you now.
And so she's like, yeah, we were gonna go like together, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. Like go to Hogsmeade. And she's like as a
Okay.
date, like as a date. And Sirius and Peter suddenly like stop what they're doing, and Rebus just stares at Lily like he's like, excuse me? And then he looks at James, and James just has like the stupidest, smuggest, like cockiest grin of anybody ever. And he's like, but also he's like pretending to like casually like read a book or whatever, and like not paying attention. Um, and Rebus is like, you're joking. And she's like, I'm afraid not. And he just looks at James, and and then Lily looks at James, and she's like, but if he doesn't wipe that stupid freaking grin off of his face, I might retroactively decline. And James is like, hey, like, what the heck? And so they have a little back and forth, and it just seems to like have like a weirdly flirtatious vibe that the other boys are not used to, and they're like, they're like, what is going on here? And so Sirius is like, what is happening right now? And James looks, at Lily and then back at Sirius, and he's like, well, I think what's happening is we're trying to tell you that we're dating. And then just that statement, I think, was just a lot for the boys to handle. They're like, you two are like actually dating, like it's decided. And Lily's like, yeah, I'd say so. And Sirius like, how long? Um, and she's like, I don't know, not long, just like a couple of weeks now. And then all three of the boys just like
In like
freak out.
weeks?
They're like, weeks. And they're like, what the heck? Like, why haven't you told us before now? And James is like, you never asked. And like just pillows get thrown at him. And Sirius is just yelling. They're just like, we didn't think we'd have to ask about this. And Sirius is like, about all the times you decided to not give us too many details about your love life. This was the time. This was it. They're not. I feel like that just goes on for a while. But I think this very quickly turns into like a let's all get mad at James party. And Lily's just kind of there until James is like, hey, it was her idea. And then they're all like, Lily? They all turn on her, and she's like, okay. She's like, no, it was definitely James's fault because he showed up in the hallway at the wrong time. Um, and they're like, dude. And so they have a solid good time where they talk about like how it happened, how much they hid it, and actually for how long and stuff. And Sirius eventually was like, oh my gosh, I was right that morning that you guys looked weird about your thing, like that when he almost realized it, but then he got the letter with all the money. And so then they all agreed that Sirius had definitely figured it out, even though Remus completely disagreed. He was like, no, I figured it out first. But no, I don't think Peter was like hugely into this conversation, but it definitely felt like the most like old times than it had in a while, But of course, eventually, Lily is like, okay, like I'm gonna go to bed. And James is like, okay, like I'll walk you down. And they're all like, that's weird. They're like, this is just weird. And so then when James comes back, he's subjected to just more and more questions, mostly from Remus. But James is like, he's like, listen, I'm not gonna say anything about like Lily and like how she's feeling. Like that's her thing. Is like, but you can ask me about me, and that's it. And so they did. And Remus is like, okay, cool. So first thing in the morning, Lily is getting an interrogation as well. And Sirius is like, you are free to do that, but honestly, I'm good. And Peter's like, same. Like, Remus, you care about this maybe a little bit too much. And Remus is like, why do I care so much? I brought this relationship together, didn't I? And James is like, no, you didn't. And he's like, Remus is like, okay, yes, I did. Who sat next to her in 5th year and started talking to her? It was me. Was it you? No, it was me. He's like, who did her essay for her when she was having a bad day? It was me. I made this all happen. I'm the reason she's friends with us. I'm the reason you guys are dating. Anyway, I think that goes on for a while. So that is basically the end of the episode, except there's a little secret end credit scene. Like if this was, a TV show, this would be an end credit scene. It wouldn't be an actual scene. The actual episode would end there with them all, getting on James. But are we ready? Are we ready for the extra special end credit scene?
I have a suspicious idea. Suspect what it might be.
What do you think it's gonna be?
I don't want to say.
Okay. Anyway, okay. So Sirius's friends might not have been just acutely aware of what an undeniable vow is or what it looks like. Regulus does not have that luxury. So that night he comes out of the bathroom with his just with a t-shirt on, and his left arm fully exposed. I think his doormate's fully aware of the dark mark, just since day one. And I think freaking Barty Crouch Jr. already had one too. And so it only takes a few seconds for Desmond, the nosy one of the group, I have decided, of the dorm.
Desmond.
You guys know Desmond. I feel like it only takes him a few seconds to notice. And he's like, what'd you make an undeniable vow for? And Regulus is like, do you ever think? How do you expect me to answer that question?
He's like, that's the whole point of the undeniable part of it.
It's the whole thing. And he's like, okay, well, you can say who you made it with. That's allowed. And he's like, not if it's part of the vow. And he's immediately happy that they added that clause to the vow. But then, this dude Lance is like, you have literally half the school under your thumb. Who would you not trust to keep a secret? What the heck? And Regulus is like, who said it was part of the school, And Lance is like,
you didn't have it this morning. Where else have you gone?
They don't know. He's a freaking Death Eater. I'm sure he goes in and out of the castle. But anyway, and that's just kind of the end of it. Everybody in the room is aware, but that's pretty much it. Until about midnight that night, when he heard Barty open his hangings and sit at the foot of his bed, and then pull them shut. And Regulus sits up, and he's annoyed. He's like, what? And then a silencing spell goes up, and Barty's like, please don't tell me you've been doing anything stupid. And he's like, since when have I done anything stupid? No. And he's like, okay, since when do you make an undeniable vow? Who are you making promises with that you can't trust? And he's like, it's none of your business. And Barty raised his eyebrows, and he's like, okay, is that how we're doing things now? And Regulus doesn't say anything. And Barty continues, and he's like, look, it's just not like you to be like this. And he's like, well, I really haven't had the best week, have I, Barty? And Barty doesn't say anything, and he's like, okay, anyway, my point is, it's not really like you to resort to something like this. You usually know everything about whoever you're working with or talking to, and this is just, why didn't you have dirt on them? What's going on here? And Regulus is like, I did have enough on them. I did. This was just an extra precaution. And he's like, since when do you need extra precautions? And he's like, since it came to protecting us. And then Barty stops, and he's like, I did this for us, okay? And Barty is confused but putting things together, and he's like, who found out? And Regulus is like, no one that's gonna tell. And he's like, Reg, I thought we stopped this so that nobody would find out. And Regulus is like, I know, I'm sorry, no one else will ever find out, no one. And Barty kind of moves closer and puts his hand on his shoulder, and he's like, it's all right. And he's like, are you sure they won't tell? And Regulus is like, I'm positive.
They can't now,
Well, they can, but then he would just know. But he's like, you sure they won't tell? And he's like, I'm positive. And he's like, then why stop? And so then they kiss. And that's the end of the episode, officially. So we got freaking Regulus and Barty Crouch Jr. Anyway, yeah. How do we feel? Do you know that I was a Barty-less shipper? Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
You didn't know that was a thing? Yeah, I guess it's not really the most popular one. But it's there. It's for sure there. Because I saw it and I was like, that's crazy. And then I thought about it and I was like, that would actually kind of work. But yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of the vibe. So we're not gonna see like a ton from them. Like they're not like vital to a lot of the story. I think that kiss is the only thing that we'll actually see like from them. But like there's other, things that happen related to that. So
Yeah.
I had one person DM me like a year ago, and she was like, "Do you ship Bardyless?" And I was like, "A little bit." She's like, "Is it gonna happen?" And I was like, "Yeah, but like it's gonna take a while." And then she's like kind of kept up with me, and like every couple months has been like, "Is it still coming?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so I just know as soon as this comes out, she's gonna be like, "Let's go." Like literally waiting years for this plot line. But yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed writing this episode. This was one of my favorites to write, because the Regulus and Sirius stuff, it like set we got to some of it this time, but there's more to come with that. And I'm very excited to start this kind of plot line. But anyway, what are your thoughts and feelings?
Just like as it goes on, like I get more excited for like Regulus and like less excited for Peter just because like I know what happens and I'm just like
Yeah.
uh.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. I don't know, but we're gonna I mean we gotta see Regulus go bad though. That's the thing. Like he's already a Death Eater, but we gotta see a part of that, right? 'Cause like you don't get to be um up there unless you do something, you know? But deep down we all know Regulus is at least somewhat good because he ends up killing no, he doesn't even kill a seventh of Voldemort's soul. He just kind of moves it. Man's just moved it around.
He tried.
I know, he tried, and he did in his defense, he did literally die. But like also he literally just moved it. Like I don't know. That's the episode. We did it. Oh, I did want to say something else though. Um there is a fun and funky thing that has been started in the past week related to this podcast called the Captioning Crew. We love the Captioning Crew. They're a great gang of people. So if you look on YouTube, I don't think episode 1 is up, funnily enough, but episodes 2 and 3 of this podcast now have like legit actual captions that are not like auto-generated on YouTube, which is just so much better, so much more helpful for anybody who has hearing issues or anything like that, or processing issues, or just like wants to understand what we're saying when we talk over each other. So it's just really great. So yeah, I have a Discord server where we edit the captions together. It was certainly nothing. I've always wanted to do it, but I've never been able to do it on my own. I did look. One time I got halfway through an episode on my own, and it took me like 2 hours because I am just not good at it. I can't do it. I can't concentrate on it. And so like I had tried to do that in the beginning. Like I always wanted that to be a thing, and I had just given up because I was like, who's gonna help me with this? And now we have like 40 people who were like, yeah, I'll help you with that. And I was like, what the heck? So yeah, so we have the Captioning Crew in English. We also have people working on some Spanish translations. I don't know if that's gonna get very far because there's really not a lot of them. But if you're interested in joining, hit me up on my Instagram. It's in the description of this episode. And yeah, we love the Captioning Crew.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Oh, but I will say you have to be over 18 to join the server because I do not want to moderate children. Because that scares me. But yeah. So there's that. And then another thing before we end, it is my birthday next Saturday, and we usually film on Saturdays. And so either there won't be an episode or there will be an episode that we are able to record together, and that's That's what's gonna happen because I'm gonna go visit Emma for my birthday. But yeah, so possibility of an episode together, but if there isn't, it's because we're having a good time.
Yeah.
So any last minute things to add? I don't think so either.
I love captions.
We love them. Good job, captions. Yeah, all right, well, I will wrap it up. So thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate it. Shout out to Benji for the music and Metamorphomatis for the cover art and to the captioning crew for the captions. Eventually, I don't know when they're coming for this episode, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.
Bye.